Wonderful. All right. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and segue into our next session. So after all that great data, this will be a great tee up for our next presenter. Our next speaker is Dr. Steve Robbins. Born in Vietnam, Dr. Robbins immigrated with his mother to the United States during a time when there was much anti-war and anti-Vietnamese sentiment present. Working through and rising out of the challenges of discrimination, poverty in the tough streets of Los Angeles, Dr. Robbins draws upon his personal experiences to bring insightful perspectives on issues of inclusion and innovation, leadership, and the power of caring. He is a behavioral scientist and a powerful storyteller who melds cognitive neuroscience, social psychology, and humor into a persuasive narrative that will inspire you even as he disrupts and challenges the way you think about the world. He uses neuroscience and the science of human behavior to encourage individuals and organizations to be more open-minded, mindful, and intentional about inclusion and valuing people for their unique gifts, abilities, and experiences. The inclusive power of his message is why organizations like Coca-Cola, Disney, Ford, Walmart, Lululemon, Bank of America, NASA, Pixar, and our friends at Cinemark Theaters, who first introduced me to Dr. Robbins, who are also joining us today, all call on Steve to inspire, educate, and prepare their people for the exciting challenges of dynamic and diverse environments. I am so thrilled to announce Dr. Steve Robbins, who's joining us today. And let's bring Steve on.
Hello, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me as part of your meeting. Very good to be here with you. I don't know if where you are, but here in Michigan, we finally have warm weather. So very good. It just snowed last week. So very good to be here. Let me start off by first asking you all questions. And please first turn on your mic. Turn on your mic first for this part of it, right? Everybody turn on mic. And if you can, turn on video. Better for my brain to interact with you if I can see you, right? So let me ask first question. What first word, first thought pop into your head when you see and hear me? Just say out loud.
Energy.
Energy, lots of energy. 4 cups of coffee, and now I switch over to tea. It's afternoon, right? So what else? More.
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. 4 cups of coffee. Yeah, enthusiasm, right? What else?
Casual.
Casual. Oh yeah. Virtual world. I actually wear pants for you today, so usually wear shorts.
Passionate.
Yes, very passionate. And I tell you why a little later, right? I bet maybe some of first word maybe pop into your head is Asian. Yes, I Asian. Who think Asian? Say, raise your hand. Who think Asian? Oh, you very perceptive. You are very observant. Right? Maybe some of you think smart. Yes, all Asians smart. I Asian with Ph.D. I super smart, right? No, not to believe stereotype. I know some stupid Asians, so not believe. Maybe some of you, maybe a first word come out, accent. Yes, I have accent. But think, you have accent too. Everybody have accent from another perspective, right? Except I don't have the accent that you think that I have. That was my very bad Mr. Miyagi accent that I learned from watching Karate Kid growing up, right? Remember the original? Daniel-san, oh, wax on, oh, wax off. Okay. I don't do that accent just for fun. I do it for a reason. In graduate school at Michigan State University, some of you just starting to get, I don't speak with an accent, right? You're just kind of figuring this all out, okay? At Michigan State University, a colleague of mine did a research project that he ended up calling the uh-oh syndrome. And the uh-oh syndrome was this. He was doing research on how would monolingual English-speaking students react to professors' accents. So he plopped himself down in these various classes that have professors who spoke with accents. He would watch, he would observe, he would listen. And as soon as these professors would start speaking with their accents, what would some of the students do? Well, my friend observed some students getting up out of their seats and leaving the class, never to return. Presumably because they didn't want to have to deal with the professor's accent. He heard students say a number of things, some of which I cannot repeat right now. And obviously, he heard students say, uh-oh, 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 the name of his research project. Well, my friend ended up observing the students who decided to stay in the class. He watched them throughout the semester to see what would happen. And to make a long story short, this is what he found out. At the end of the semester, he asked the students who stayed, what was the communication like? Can you tell me a little bit more about those interactions? Many of the students said, we thought we'd have communication issues, but we really didn't. They said, over the course of the semester, we learned to understand and decipher words that we couldn't understand at first. Kind of like what many of us parents do with our little kids, right? Parents out there, raise your hands. I want to see who you are, right? When your kids were first starting to speak, could you understand every word that they said? No. At that point, did you say, uh-oh, and just drop the parenting class? Some of you probably wanted to at various points, didn't you? But you stuck around, and over the course of time, you learned to understand one another. Very simple question here. Turn on your mics and answer it for me. Very simple question. Parents, when you could not understand your kids, why did you stick around?
Because you love them.
Oh yeah, oh good, good. I got the appropriate answer because sometimes I get because I had to, right?
I couldn't get the price I wanted for them for sale.
Okay, all right. I got a good group here, right? No, hopefully because you love them. And when you love your kids, you cared about them. And when you cared about them, you put some, guess what? Effort into understanding them. And when you put effort into understanding them, what happened for you over the course of time? You learned to understand them. At least until they became teenagers, and then the process started all over again, right? And that was the key for these students. The students who cared about something, whether it was their grade, the professor, or something else, when they cared about something, they put some effort into understanding. And when they put effort into understanding, guess what happened for them over the course of the semester? They learned to understand things they could not understand at the beginning of the semester. So what my colleague found in his research is something that we all kind of know intuitively, and that something is this. The more effort you put into understanding, the more you understand. What? Yes, effort is positively correlated with understanding. Those students who had indicated on a survey at the end of the semester that they put some effort into understanding ended up evaluating these professors with their accents as good or better as any other on the campus of Michigan State University. My colleague wrote this in his paper. In our encounters with difference, which we will have more of in the future, we need to give others a chance. In our encounters with difference, we need to give others a chance, he wrote. I like what he wrote there, but I love what we talked about afterward. We talked about this. In our encounters with difference, we need to give ourselves a chance. Yeah, we kind of flip the switch, turn the arrow. In our encounters with difference, we need to give ourselves a chance. We talked about, I love what we talked about because of this reason. See, probably like me, you've watched and observed in our society. When something is wrong, when something is broken, who do we like to go fix first? Yeah, when something is wrong, who do we like to go fix first?
You, not me.
Yeah, no. Exactly. We like to go fix the other person first, right? It's always the other person's fault, right? We want to fix the other person. But think about this for a second. At any given moment, we are the other person. At any given moment, we are the other person, and who's the only person you can truly fix?
Yourself.
Yourself, exactly. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to help fix you. All right, that was very funny. I should have got more laughs out of that one. Okay? That's the best the jokes get during this workshop. No, I'm just here to share some things that I've learned along this journey that others call diversity and inclusion. Some people refer to me as a diversity expert. I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I'm a diversity expert. Why do I say that? In large parts because I don't know what a diversity expert is supposed to be like. First of all, there's no university on the face of the earth where you can get a Ph.D., a doctorate in diversity. There's no list of criteria that people come up with and agreed upon that says, if you do these things, you know these other things, you're now a diversity expert. Nothing like that. If I'm an expert in anything, it's around human behavior. And I more consider myself a student of human behavior. See, my Ph.D., my doctorate is in the field of communication science. If you know anything about the field of communication science, you know it grows out of two more well-known prominent fields called psychology and sociology. So you can think of me as a psychosociologist, right? I'm a psychosociologist. And what I do as a psychosociologist is I study you all, right? I look what you're like in your natural habitat, right? I look what happens to you when you encounter new and novel things. I observe how you treat other people when you don't get enough sleep or are under lots of stress or a combination of both. And it's not very pretty at times, right? I'm also something called a cognitive neuroscientist. You know what that means? Yeah, it means I had no dates in college. That's exactly what it means. No, it just means I'm a geek who studies the brain. I'm a geek who studies the brain. My particular branch of neuroscience has been labeled social neuroscience. So what we as social neuroscience do is we explore what the brain is doing in social settings when other human beings are around. We look at how others' actions and their words impact and actually shape our brain over time, and then we look at how the brain operates in response to those things, right? The coolest thing I find in social neuroscience is what we'll explore a lot during this talk today, and it becomes a basis for this thing that we call inclusion. But the cool thing is this. See, the human brain, our brain, is optimized to perform at its best under two root conditions. And these two root conditions I'm about to give you are what we call necessary, but not necessarily sufficient conditions. So there needs to be some other factors along with these conditions, but these are among the foundational conditions for sustained optimal performance by the human brain. The two conditions are these. See, our brain wants to be around other people, or as I like to say, be part of a tribe. And then not only does it want to be part of a tribe, it wants that tribe to, get this, to value it, to care about it. Let's take a quick look at these two conditions and then we'll explore them a little further in our talk today, right? Let's take this condition. Why does our brain want to be part of a tribe? Oh yeah, while you're thinking about that, let me give you some things to noodle upon. The human brain developed long ago in very hostile, dangerous environments, say the Serengeti, right? And it has this thing that I have labeled the primal directive. The primal directive. It's the first priority directive of the brain. Do you know what that primal directive is?
Survival.
Yes, I was going to give you some hints. Like, think the Bee Gees, think Saturday Night Fever. The primal directive is what?
Right.
Staying alive. Staying alive, yeah.
Staying alive, right? Yeah, it has the primal directive of staying alive. So whenever I ask you something about the human brain, it probably goes back directly or indirectly to this thing called that I have labeled the primal directive of staying alive. So let's practice this. Let's practice this. Why does our brain want to be part of a tribe? And you say,
Staying alive.
staying alive.
Staying alive.
Take a look at it from this perspective. Remember hostile, dangerous environments. We survive longer because our ancestors survived longer because they were in groups. Why? Because compare us, the human being, to the rest of the animal kingdom, for our size and weight, we are relatively weak and slow. A chimpanzee, half our size, is 3 times as strong as us. That's not even the strongest of the primates. The gorilla, 15 times stronger than us. And Kong, 1,000,000 times stronger than us. Right? Take a baby deer, a fawn, it's born. How soon after that little thing is born does it begin to walk and run? Anyone know? Little baby deer born, how long?
Minutes, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Within minutes, they'll be walking. Within the hour, most of, not all of them, will be running. Parents out there, how soon before a human baby walks? Yeah, about a year on average, right? Year average, right? I can give you more examples. You can probably think of your own examples, but you kind of get the idea. We human beings need others to survive. Not only do we need them in the womb, our mom, we need them as soon as we're plopped out of the womb. And not just for a few more minutes, hours, days, weeks, or months. We need them for another 25 more years, I'm finding out. I have 4 kids between the ages of 18 and 25, and they still need mom and dad, right? So we want to be part of a tribe. We want to be around other people, generally speaking. But have you noticed, you can be around other people and also feel very lonely? See, being alone and loneliness are times 2 distinctly different things. So not only do we want to be part of a tribe, we want that tribe to, again, value us, to care about us, to hold us in significance. Why is that so important to the human brain? What do you think?
Safety.
Yeah, staying alive, exactly. Safety, for safety reasons. So imagine yourself on the Serengeti long ago, hostile, dangerous environments. Let's say you're part of a tribe, so that first condition is met. That tribe values you, but it doesn't value you that much. You're very low in the hierarchy. Under those conditions, when you're not highly valued, what happens to you when the tribe starts to run low on food and water? You're one of the first not to get food and water, right? What happens to you when the tribe starts to dabble in sacrifice? You're one of the first to be experimented on, aren't you? One of the first to be thrown off the island, so to speak. So to be part of a tribe that valued you a great deal raised the probability of survival. Take these two conditions, add on some other factors, sprinkle in a ton of time, and what you get is this. The brain is hardwired to belong. And I'll show you the hardwiring later, the circuitry later. And for no other reasons, that's why organizations should be addressing issues of inclusion, because the good work of inclusion leads to people feeling like they belong. And we're going to look at the brain. You're going to start to see when this fundamental need is met, then you can start to unleash people's talents and skills. It's a fundamental need that needs to be met before full talents and skills can be unleashed. Have I piqued your interest? All right. Hey, before I go on, any questions? Anything you want to know? I mean, we're gonna go into your little rooms later and talk things out, and we're gonna have other questions. But I just want to pause once in a while. Any questions? Just turn on your mics and ask question. I'm probably not doing things the way Stephanie wants things done, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I have the camera now, right? So any questions?
Isn't the primal directive sort of related to the fact that diversity is kind of primal directive goes against diversity? Because if you want to belong and include, the primal directive is you go and get people like yourself. So diversity and inclusion sort of compete with each other in modern society. Is that what you're saying?
Well, in a sense, I thought you were going to go in this direction. Diversity becomes really hard for the brain. The funny thing is, once we become part of a tribe, we start to not like others in other tribes. Okay, but hold on to that thought. Whoever said that, hold on to that thought. The answer will come soon. Okay, diversity and inclusion can work together, but you have to have some skills in place in people. Okay, what else? And one more question for right now. Or are you a little tired? How many of you are tired? How many of you are on the East Coast, Eastern time, like me? You ate some lunch, your blood's going to your stomach, it's coming out of your brain, you get a little tired. Okay, so you may be a little tired, I'm a little tired. Let's wake up our brains, okay? I'm going to talk about the brain. As you might imagine, talking about the brain, we're going to get into some complex concepts and subjects. And your brain actually has to be warmed up to process complex information. It's kind of like an athlete warming up for an event. So we're going to warm up our brains, wake up our brains, get our synapses and neurons going online so we can process some of the information we're about to dive into. I used to be a college professor. I'd have these 8 o'clock morning classes where students would roll in kind of sleepy or kind of drunk, often a combination of both. So I'd find a way to wake up their brains. To do that, I just gave them a simple math problem, right? So we're going to do a simple math problem to wake up our brains. For those of you who are mathophobic, do not worry. It's very easy. It's simple addition. I'm going to give you a series of numbers to add up. Add them up silently in your head. Don't do it out loud. Don't do it on a piece of paper. Do it silently in your head. And then when I ask for the sum, the answer, yell it out so everybody can hear how smart you are. Right? Because if there's ever going to be a time you're going to get a math problem right, this is the time. It's that easy. It's simple addition. A bunch of rounded numbers you're going to add up. There's no decimals, no fractions. Got it? Just warming up our brains. Do it silently in your head until I ask for the answer. Please, for this part, turn on your mics because I want to hear everybody get the right answer. This is easy stuff just to warm up our brains. Begin with the number 1,000. Put 1,000 into your head. To that 1,000, add 40. Add another 1,000. Add 30. Add another 1,000. Add 20. Add another 1,000. Add 10. What's the answer? Yell it out.
4100.
5,000. 5,000.
You got raise your hand if you got 5,000. Let me see if you got 5,000. Okay. If you got 5,000, that tells me your brain is working very, very good. Let's just see if your brain is working correctly. Before I had you add 10, you arrived at 4,090. Is that not right?
That's correct.
What's 4,090 plus 10? 0 plus 0.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
6,000, yeah.
Many of you suck at math.
4,000.
Do we get bonus points for getting it right? I felt stupid because I yelled 4,100 and everyone's like, no, it's 5,000. I'm like, I must have missed something.
You get bonus points, exactly. You can turn those bonus points in after the workshop for nothing. Okay, so you get bonus points. Okay, so do not worry if you got this wrong. Most people I do this with get it wrong. No matter if I'm dealing with an audience of NASA engineers or MIT mathematicians, a majority of the people get it wrong. Why? First of all, it's not a measure of math intelligence. It's not even a measure of general intelligence, but it does give us some indication of some of the things your brain really, really loves and seeks out. What's one of the things, based on what you saw here, what's one of the things that your brain really, really loves that helps with the primal directive of staying alive? Anyone know?
Round numbers.
Round numbers, yeah, making it even.
Whole things.
Starts with the, I think I heard patterns. I think I heard someone, your brain really, really loves patterns. Your brain loves patterns so much, it will find a pattern where a pattern does not exist, right? Why does your brain love patterns? Well, from a psychological perspective, your brain loves patterns because it hates uncertainty. Uncertainty, high levels of uncertainty in the human brain causes in us stress, stressful feelings. Think of this past year, uncertainty around the pandemic, uncertainty around racial issues, uncertainty around political issues. What do you think our collective nation was in terms of stress? What were you like? What were your colleagues like? High states of uncertainty produce stress in us. In athletes, high states of uncertainty produce stress and has an impact on their performance. Okay? Now, your brain is always looking for patterns to reduce uncertainty and also to get this, to make predictions about what might happen next, right? Our ancestors long ago were going into environments and were looking for patterns, right? Identifying patterns. From those patterns, they tried to make predictions about what happened next, what might happen next. And if they were relatively accurate at making those predictions, they survived a little longer. In today's world, you retailers, you marketers, salespeople, anyone actually, in the marketplace, if you're relatively good, your organization is relatively good at identifying patterns in the marketplace with the customers, with clients, with consumers, and make relatively good predictions about what they might buy or might like next, you survived a little longer. So it operates in the same way today from an organizational perspective. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Any questions about this? Okay. So
how do you correct for that?
How do you correct for what?
For the fact that you're going to distort things to fit your patterns.
That's where we'll get into that a little later, but it involves being more mindful, right? But there are a number of steps you get to do that, and you have to get to that. But it involves, the first step is being more mindful, being aware of certain things. Okay, so I asked, why does your brain love patterns from a psychological perspective? It hates uncertainty, always trying to identify patterns and make predictions. As you probably know, if you ask a question from a different perspective, you might get a different answer. So let's ask the question from a different perspective. Why does your brain love patterns from a neurobiological, neurophysiological perspective? Any thought, any guesses?
Takes less energy to do the same work.
Exactly. In fact, there is a simple one-word answer for why your brain loves patterns from a neurobiological perspective. It's because it's fundamentally, guess what? Lazy. The brain's kind of lazy. And retailers can actually leverage that aspect of it, right? Your brain is fundamentally lazy, but it doesn't like to be called lazy. It'd rather be called efficient. Right? So when someone else calls us lazy, we go, we're not lazy, we're just efficient, right? That's kind of like your brain. We know that your brain operates on an efficiency principle, which means this. It's always trying to, as someone said, conserve energy. To understand that piece better, you need to know some basic neurobiology. In the average human adult, the brain accounts for about 2% of our body mass, but requires about 20% of our body's energy at any given moment in time. For its size and weight, it uses a disproportionate amount of energy. It is an energy hog, right? And this is not fake or imaginary energy we're talking about. It's energy in the form of glucose. Your brain primarily runs on sugars, right? Processing information, thinking actually requires energy. How many of you have had these days where you get up in the morning, you're refreshed, you've had a good night's sleep, you're energized, ready to go, you go throughout the day, do nothing really physical, but end the day completely exhausted? How many have those days? Yes, get this, thinking requires energy. But with that said, you cannot lose weight by thinking really hard. I know some of you are going there. You're trying to be lazy about losing weight, right? No, theoretically you could, but I doubt any of us will get to that point, okay? So my approach to teaching, whether it's around issues of inclusion and diversity or sales and marketing or communication and persuasion, is I lay down a human behavioral concept or an idea, and then we apply it to that area. We've learned some things about your brain and human behavior. Now we're going to apply it to issues of inclusion and diversity and see why diversity issues can be really hard for the brain, okay? Now, you have two environments, new and familiar. Oh yeah, you retailers and marketers out there, you'll be able to apply some of this to how brains engage new products, okay? So you have a new environment, you have a familiar environment. By and large, which one of these environments requires your brain to process more information and thus use more energy?
New.
New, yeah. Your brain, when you walk into an environment, your brain has to spend more energy in those novel and new environments. Because kind of this is what is happening. You walk into an environment, your brain collects data about the environment, matches it up against the existing database, and it goes, hey, we don't have much energy about this, much information about this environment. We don't know what's going to happen next. We better think about it more. We better analyze it more to try to identify patterns, which requires what? Energy. Now, if your brain's always trying to conserve energy, which environment will it prefer, the new or the familiar? Of course, the familiar. It's going to prefer the familiar, right? Again, your brain walks into an environment, collects data about the environment, matches it up against the existing database and goes, hey, we have lots of information here. We know the patterns. We know what's going to happen next. We don't need to think about it anymore. Think of these as your psychological and physical comfort zones. We love our comfort zones, don't we? That's why we call them comfort zones. And the great attribute of a comfort zone, that which makes it comfortable, is familiarity. So from a basic neurobiological perspective, guess why we tend to hang out with people who are like us? Guess why Democrats hang out with Democrats, Republicans with Republicans? Guess why Christians with Christians, Muslims with Muslims, atheists with atheists? Guess why we tend to hire and promote folks who are very similar to us as opposed to people who are very different than us? Guess why it's hard to get people to switch to a new product once they've had a product for a long time? Right. Let me pause here. Any thoughts or questions? Am I stirring stuff in your head at all?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead. Any questions, though?
So Steve, this is Pat. I have a question.
Yeah.
So in the retail space, we often think that a store redesign, right, can provide a lift in sales.
Yeah.
Or if you're a credit card issuer, a new credit card design or a co-branded credit card design, you know, the Michigan State Spartans and Visa, whatever, can provide a lift. Does that because your brain is working harder to understand?
There's a number of things going on. There's not a simple answer, but generally speaking, let's lay this concept down. Your brain kind of operates on an ROI mentality, return on investment, right? Its currency is not obviously money. Its currency is glucose. Most of the time, it's trying to hoard it, save its glucose, but it will spend its glucose, its sugars, its energy, if it decides that if I spend this much, I will get this much back. right? So if you are in current need of something, your brain will go, hey, I often use this product here, but it hasn't been working before. It hasn't worked as well, so I might look for a new product. Or your brain goes, hey, I need a new product. I don't know anybody makes this, but I have this kind of great familiarity with this brand. I wonder if they have it. When you say co-branded, if I'm already in have positive attributes, positive valence with Michigan State University, anything attached to Michigan State University will have a tendency to start out as negative for me, start out as positive for me. That's why we use celebrities, for example, to sell our stuff. Right? We attach it to something that we like and know, and we go, the new thing on its own is new, and your brain goes, what is that? Right? Anytime anything new enters the purview of your brain does this. It goes, what is that? What is that? But if we can bring the new thing in with something that you already know and like, the new thing is accepted much easier by the brain.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Good question. Oftentimes, when it comes to issues of inclusion and diversity, it's not necessarily because we hate or dislike other people. It's we like our people more. They don't require much energy on our part.
No, I do. I think it's really interesting too. I just have a quick comment, but along those same principles, P&G does personality testing for people that are going to come and work there. And I worked at P&G early in my career, and it was always, I thought it was silly at first, but then when you actually read up on it, they found that people who like each other and have an easier time getting along are actually a lot more productive at the office and tend to work more because they enjoy being around those people. So I thought that was an interesting insight, but it really also kind of flows into this thinking too. If I have to work less hard at a relationship at the office, then I can invest more energy into other things there. And so I've adopted that philosophy with my teams as well, and look to build a cultural fit more than I care about specific experiences that people might have. And have found a lot of success doing that. Is really born out of my time at P&G. And the other thing that strikes me is every time I meet somebody and I find out they worked at P&G, in the back of my mind, I know that this is a person I'm likely going to enjoy being around. So
yeah. So
association too.
Yeah, very good points. Yeah, we tend to operate better around those that we like, but we can go too far. Once we like each other too much, then we start to agree with one another too much, which leads to this thing we all know about called groupthink, right? So, but now let me, you said, I think you said gut feeling or intuitions about somebody?
Correct, in the back, yeah, I said in the back of my mind, but yes, it's my gut feeling about people.
Yeah.
Correct.
So let's take a look at gut feeling and intuition before we go to a breakout room. Let me give you two terms that will help us kind of describe the operation of the human brain and start to understand maybe gut feeling and some other things a little bit more. Let's go back, and the terms I'm about to give you, these simple terms about the brain, are actually very simple. They do not do justice to the complexity of the human brain. We'd have to take a year-long course on neuroscience to get to that point, but for our time here, these terms will suffice. These are metaphorical, not literal, okay? The brain isn't differentiated like this, like I'm about to give you, but it gives some indication of some parts of your brain. Go back to the math problem that many of you got wrong, right? You said 5,000 when the answer was 4,100. You started that math problem out using what I call your modern brain. Your modern brain, think of that as your prefrontal cortex. You've heard the prefrontal cortex. It's the area of the brain that sits behind the eyes, the executive center of the brain, right? Your modern brain was designed to think about things. Another word for thinking is cognition. Your modern brain was designed to analyze things. Your modern brain can do planning. It can do planning, for example, because it has this ability to do metacognition. Anyone know what metacognition means? Let me give a hint. A meta-study is a study of studies. A meta-analysis is an analysis of analyses. If cognition is thinking, what is metacognition?
Thinking about thinking.
Exactly, it's thinking about thinking. Metacognition is something that we can do that very few other animals can do. And the ones that can do it, like some other primates, elephants, pigs, dolphins, they cannot do it to the same degree that we can. Metacognition allows us not only to think and reflect upon our own thoughts right now, be self-aware, so to speak, but we can conjure up scenarios that have never existed before and reflect upon them, think about them. Other animals can't do that. And not only can we live in the future, we can live in the past. We can recall situations or products that we've bought before and go, did I like that? Did I not like that? I'm going to buy it again, right? Other animals don't do that. Other animals use past experiences, but they don't reflect upon and evaluate past experiences. We'll see that in a moment. Okay? So that's metacognition. Now, back to that math problem. Once your brain thinks it's found a pattern, you kind of stop using your modern brain. You just kind of stop critically thinking and analyzing, and you move into what I call your ancient brain. Again, this is my term. These are my terms. If you read Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, he'll refer to them as System 1 and System 2. Okay? I like more colorful terms, right? Your ancient brain was not designed to think about things. Your ancient brain was designed to quickly react to things without thinking. Your brain uses simple rules that we call heuristics that it learns over time through past experiences, but it doesn't really think about the past experiences. It's kind of like Pavlov's dog and makes associations, operant conditioning, right? So as an example, if you encounter a situation A, you do B, and C outcome occurs, and you like C outcome, your brain takes note of that. Next time you do situation A, encounter situation A, you go, hey, I did B last time, let's do B again, and C outcome occurs again, and you like that. So your brain writes you what we might call a cognitive script, a line of code that just runs right away, allowing it to quickly react. So if you hit A, you do B, and C turns out, hopefully. It works very well when you actually hit A over and over again, and you do B, and most likely C will turn out. Where does the problem lie? The problem lies here. When your brain thinks it's encountered A, but you've actually encountered X, and because your brain thinks it's encountered A, it does B, and then Y outcome turns out, and you do not like Y outcome. Your ancient brain, compared to the modern brain, is relatively bad at noticing differences in the environment. It doesn't take notice of differences as much. Right? Your modern brain, so let's wrap up some things about the modern brain. Modern brain is kind of slow compared to the faster ancient brain. Now, the modern brain processes information very quickly, but the ancient brain processes it a lot faster. It has fewer rules that it uses, for example. Okay? The modern brain is about being mindful. The faster ancient brain is about being mindless. What's mindlessness? Mindlessness is, how many of you have ever done this? You walk into a room and you go, why am I here? Why'd I come into this room anyway? How many have ever done that? Or those of us who wear glasses, how many of you wear glasses and at one point you put them on top of your head and then you're looking for your glasses and then my wife goes to me, hey, there's your glasses right there, hon, right on top of your head. That's mindlessness. We forget what we did. We aren't mindful when we did it. So we misplace our glasses or our keys, or we wash our hair twice in the shower, right? Because you forgot that you did it that one time. So slow, mindful, faster, mindless. Your modern brain, your mindless, faster, ancient brain is about doing things effortlessly. It likes effortless stuff, right? What's effortless? This is effortless. What is 2 plus 2?
4.
Right? That's effortless. You know what effortful is? What's 39 times 18 times 3? That's effortful. Many of us can probably do that in our head, but it would require effort on our part. The ancient brain, let's see what I forget. Oh, this is a big thing. Let's put this. This is about, modern brain is about effortful. Right? The modern brain is about more cognition and thinking. It's rules-based. The ancient brain is much more about emotion or affect. Right? The ancient brain is the one that processes emotion. The central area of the ancient brain is the amygdala. It's your fight or flight center. That's where emotions go and get processed first. And then that signal gets sent to the modern brain. Okay, so we have these things kind of differentiation between these kind of different brains in your head. Let's see how it impacts us as we evaluate people, ideas, and products, right? Your ancient brain, you operate out of your ancient brain 70 to 80% of your waking hours because it's very efficient. Of your waking hours, you're doing things rather mindlessly. You're just reacting to your environment. And it pops up to 90% of the time when you're under stress. Right? You're just reacting to your world. Your brain wants to conserve energy, so it operates out of the more energy-conserving ancient brain. Okay? Now, if that's the case, what happens, let's say, when you encounter a person or a person's idea? Which brain do you think you use to evaluate them and judge them? Judge them and their idea. Which brain do you think you use most of the time?
Ancient brain.
Yeah,
Ancient brain. We want to believe that when you encounter someone, encounter an idea, a belief, we use our brain, we collect our modern brain, we collect data, run it through an algorithm, and we go, hey, this is what I think about you, this is what I think about your idea, this is what I think about your Facebook post. Reams of data say we don't do that. Reams of data and research says we encounter, say, a Facebook post, we read it, and we have this thing called a gut feeling or an intuition, a gut feeling or an intuition that emerges out of this ancient brain. Let's say in this case, you have a negative emotional reaction, which you can't stop. You can't stop it. The negative emotion reaction to that Facebook post, that signal gets sent to the modern brain. The modern brain then comes down and it doesn't go, hey, should you have that negative reaction? It comes down and goes, hey, let me confirm that negative reaction for you. You can train your brain to come down and go, hey, think about this more before you fire that Facebook post back in response to your negative reaction. Think about your mind brain can do it for you if you train yourself, but if you don't, and if you're not mindful, you kind of just confirm your reaction. I heard somebody say something.
I did. I just had a question. Isn't that also, I mean, largely tied to evolution? Because if you're out in the wild and you see something, if you stand still and evaluate whether or not it's a tiger coming to eat you or, you know, a friendly monkey in the forest, you could die very easily. And so this was all part of evolution, correct? Am I thinking about that right?
Yep, exactly. That's another way to think about it. But, you know, we're applying this stuff to issues of inclusion and diversity, but a lot of this stuff can be applied to products and consumers and retail and marketing, right? When you encounter something new, your brain, based on it uses past database and goes, oh, I have a good feeling about this. I have a bad feeling about this. The way you present colors has an impact on how your brain feels about something. And we lead with emotion more than with cognition when we evaluate and judge. It happens so much that we have a term for it. It's called affective primacy. Remember, another word for emotion is affect. We tend to lead with emotion. We're taught to lead with thinking, our modern logical brain, but that usually doesn't happen most of the time. Okay? Now, what happens, though, when you encounter somebody who's new and different to you? What do you think? How do you think your brain will respond to that? Your ancient brain will respond to that? Any guesses?
Negatively.
Negatively. Okay, so I know we're supposed to, Stephanie, Pat, where are we? Can I keep on going a little bit more?
Keep going, Steve. You're good.
Okay, so.
You are in control.
I'm in control. My wife would not agree with that. And when I'm on a golf course, my son would not agree with that. All right, so I'm going to skip a number of things because of our time here. But let's just say this. One of the first judgments your brain is making about something that it encounters, whether it's a person or an idea or, in fact, kind of a product, is trying to assess threat level. And that goes back from long ago. The first decision your brain's trying to make is, how threatening is this? It tries to make that decision so it can answer the question, can I approach or should I avoid? And for people and ideas, it kind of comes down to this. Are you an insider or an outsider? Are you part of my group or not part of my group? Are you in-group member and out-group member? And your brain makes the odds-on bet that the insider, the in-group member, is less likely to harm you than the outsider. It doesn't approach both neutrally, okay? In fact, these words, insider and outsider, this concept, idea of in-group, out-group, this is every diversity issue. Every diversity issue that we talk about is an insider-outsider issue, whether it's race, gender, class, or which department you work in. Because I go to some places when I do my work and the engineers don't like the accountants don't like the marketers, so no one likes legal or HR, right? It's insider-outsider issues. And I think if you start using these words in conversations around inclusion and diversity, it actually makes it a lot better, easier to do. Why? Let me give you a few reasons. First of all, the first reason is this is how our brain operates. This is part of every human being. We're trying to assess threat level. Long ago, it was much more about physical threat. Today, for most of us, at least on this call, it's much more about psychological or emotional threat. If we encounter an idea where your brain's trying to assess, is this a threatening idea or not? Does it threaten my belief system or is it okay, right? Another reason is why you might want to use these words around issues of inclusion and diversity is because, see, we've experienced both conditions, haven't we? Each one of us knows what it's like to be an insider. Each one of us knows what it's like to be an outsider. In fact, have you noticed you can be an insider at a 9 o'clock meeting and an outsider at a 10 o'clock meeting? In fact, have you noticed you can be an insider and an outsider in the exact same meeting? Yeah, we all know what it's like, which means this, we can empathize with the other. We can empathize with the other. When we're the insider, when we're the in-group member that's valued and cared about, and we notice someone who's kind of been left on the outside, we can empathize with them because we know what it's been like, right? But we have to be willing and motivated to. And funny thing about the brain, your brain naturally empathizes for insiders, and it doesn't naturally empathize for outsiders, especially under stress. Okay? And finally, why you might want to use the words insiders and outsiders to kind of have a more meaningful discussion around these issues of inclusion and diversity, because see, we treat insiders and outsiders differently even when they do the exact same thing. Let me give an example. My favorite example is, I got to bring my alma mater in, Michigan State University. Any Spartans out there? Any Spartans? Okay. No? Okay. See, I'm a proud Michigan State Spartan. As a proud Michigan State Spartan, I have a green S on my license plate. In fact, if you look at all the cars in our household, there's a green S on the license plate, or get this, or a Spartan head, Sparty, right? It tells everybody that my family, we are loyal citizens of Spartan Nation. We are good people. Other people in my state of Michigan, other very bad people in my state of Michigan, they have a blue M on their license plate. They are University of Michigan Wolverine. And anytime anybody drives by me with a blue M on their license plate, they cut me off, they veer right in front of me because that's what those people do. They're genetically encoded to treat other people poorly. They are animals. Wolverines, it's in their name. How could they not be, right? But here's the deal, though. If a person with a green S on their license plate drives by me and cuts me off, I'll probably say, they didn't see me. See how both the Spartan and the Wolverine, they do the exact same thing to me, cut me off in the road. But for the Wolverine, why'd they do it? It's because they're idiots. That's actually true, though. You can trust me on that one. Why does the Spartan do it? They didn't see me. Our reasoning, by and large, all else being equal, even when the insider and outsider do the same thing, our reasoning for outsiders is generally much more harsh and critical than with insiders, where it's more benefit of the doubt-ish, more lenient, right? Another example, an outsider is on welfare. Why is the outsider on welfare? It's because they're lazy, they don't work hard enough. An insider is on welfare. Why is the insider on welfare? Bad luck, poor economy, pandemic, right? But I want to note something. That's usually your ancient brain with this quick reaction. Oh yeah, by the way, that quick reaction comes within 250 milliseconds, 1/4 of a second, research suggests, for most. Then you can't stop it, okay? That's use your ancient brain going, oh, bad, good, right? What happens if you train your modern brain to come online and think, pause, and reflect and think about things? Well, this could happen. How many of you have heard stories of outsiders? Some of them in our society work very, very hard and get nowhere. They're still on welfare. How many have heard stories like that before? We all have, right? How many of you know insiders who are downright lazy? We all do. They come over for a holiday. They're called relatives, right? So our modern brain can sift through more data and more information and crunch it and go, okay, I have good and bad information about insiders and bad and good information about outsiders. They can be both, right? Our ancient brain generally doesn't do that. It goes insider good, outsider bad right away, okay? And it uses very little data to do it. It profiles, in a sense, right? An example, a few years ago when I was traveling, I was in Heathrow Airport in London, waiting for a plane to come back to the United States. Off in the distance is this guy wearing a white jacket, and he has this green S on his jacket. It looks like the Michigan State S. Now, at Michigan State, we have a kind of a secret handshake, verbal secret handshake. If I say go green and there's a Spartan around, they're supposed to say go white. So it's go green, go white, go green, go white, right? So this guy's approaching me, getting closer, he's within hearing distance. I yell out, go green. He looks at me and goes, go white. He's my Spartan homie. I can trust him. He's an insider, right? He could be a serial killer for all I know. But based on that green S, very little data, I ascribe some thoughts, some attributes to him that are more on the safe side than I would if a guy was approaching me with a blue jacket or a yellow jacket and a blue M on it. Right? So let me pause there. Let me get down one more thing. Just one more thing, and then we'll go into breakout rooms. Are you hanging in there? Are you hanging in there? Okay. Is this as I set this up? Any thoughts and comments?
Hey,
that are relevant? Yeah.
Quick one. So we've talked a lot about, how do we process people and process information around us, right? But as someone who has, worked in the US for a while, and I've tried to be a 6-foot white male, which I'm not, right? As an outsider trying to fit in. And if you think about inclusion, what does, look at it from the other perspective as if you're an outsider within the cohort, how do you adjust? And then what's the impact of that on you as an individual?
Let's go with the second one first. How is that an impact on you? Because that actually segues into what I'm talking about. And then how do you adjust, okay? But let's first look at the impact. I won't go through all the lines of research. I'll tell you what we know now. Based on a line of research that started in 2002 with UCLA neuroscientists, where they were asking what's going on in the human brain when a person feels like an outsider, who's been rejected by the group or has been bullied, right? What we know is this. This is a very bad side view of the human brain, okay? When you feel like an outsider, 2 areas of your brain light up. The first area, the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. The second area, the right ventral prefrontal cortex. These 2 areas of the brain light up when you feel like an outsider, when you've been rejected. Interestingly enough, these are also the same 2 areas of the brain that light up when you experience physical pain. Your pain circuitry lights up. But your pain circuitry doesn't light up because you got hit in the face or punched in the stomach or kicked in the shin. It was probably because you got rejected by your group. In this experiment, it was because you weren't thrown a ball in a game, right? You were included at first in this game, and then they kicked you out of the game, and then the person having their brain scanned, these 2 areas of the brain lit up. Okay? Researchers eventually labeled the phenomenon they observed the social pain of exclusion, the social pain of rejection. This is why bullying is so bad. And bullying has a hit on cognitive and task performance. Take the kid who's bullied at school and the kid who's not bullied at school. Which one generally gets better grades? Imagine a person who's kind of bullied or left out at work, and imagine a person who's not bullied and kind of accepted at work. Who generally performs better? The person who's not bullied or rejected, right? Why? Just trust me on this. It's because, see, when your brain experiences pain is a first priority emotion that your brain has to attend to. Your brain has to mobilize resources to address the pain. One of the resources it has to mobilize is attention. Your brain has to pay attention to pain. The problem with that is your brain can only pay attention to one thing at a time, okay? Which is not good for some of you because you believe you can multitask. You literally cannot multitask. How do we know that? Because there's an area of your brain right here called Brodmann's Area 10. BA10 is chiefly responsible for deciding what you pay attention to, but it can only pay attention, it only makes one decision at a time. It operates in serial fashion, not parallel fashion. And it makes those decisions as quick as every 7 milliseconds. So when you believe you're multitasking, you're actually fast toggling, fast switching. 7 milliseconds sounds fast, doesn't it? Do you have anything related to know how fast it is? Blink your eyes. Everybody blink your eyes. When you blink your eyes, that takes you approximately, oh, I forgot a 0, 350 milliseconds. When you believe you're multitasking, you're actually fast switching, fast toggling at a rate that's 50 times faster than you can blink your eyes. Now imagine if your brain has to pay attention during social pain to work, pay attention to the social pain, and you can't pay attention to more than one thing at a time, what's happening when you're at work and you've been bullied? What's happening at work when you've been ridiculed in a meeting, right? You suffer social pain, you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in that meeting, at your desk afterward. This is kind of like texting and driving. We call it distracted driving. When you're in a state of outsiderness, in a sense, you're distracted working. The research says you're about 20 to 30% less efficient in those cases. And it has a bottom line effect. Meaning it has an impact on the dollars that you use to support people and the dollars that you make by the end of the year.
I have a quick question. There in my head, there would seem to be a spectrum, right? And so you talk about being in an environment where you're bullied or feel like an outsider. But what about those environments which, exist all around where you're not necessarily bullied, but you're also not really one of the cool kids, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work and how do you think about those things?
Well, obviously, I think I mentioned earlier in passing, there are degrees of insiderness and degrees of outsiderness, right? And we navigate those environments every single day. And the cool thing about being a human being, we can be part or not part of multiple groups. Mm-hmm. So if our work group doesn't accept us, we can go to our home and be accepted, hopefully. And sometimes when I'm not even accepted at home, I'm an outsider at home, I go to the golf club where I'm more accepted by my buddies. So we can go to multiple groups, and that's what we tend to do. We try to find a group that will accept us. We might have to go to work, but we don't give our full skills, full talents, full energies to the work because it becomes a transactional thing for us, which because our ancient brain especially works on this thing called the norm of reciprocity. Anyone know what the norm of reciprocity is? If there's any universal human norm sociologists argue for, it's this norm of reciprocity. We see it all across the world. Yeah. It's captured in two phrases. You get. Yeah, you give what you get. In game theory, it's called tit for tat. Mm-hmm. We have two phrases in our society for it. The positive one goes like this. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. The negative one goes like this. What goes around, comes around. Right? So our ancient brain works on this norm of reciprocity. So if my workplace is treating me negatively, poorly, how hard do you think I'm going to work?
Right.
Or in more likely, it's if my leader is treating me negatively, how hard am I going to work? Conversely, what if my leader, my workplace is treating me positively? How hard am I going to work? Pretty hard, right? Same thing going for, this is why people take note of how organizations handle maybe issues in society. how organizations treat their customers, because their brain still operates in the norm of reciprocity. Right? You treat me well, I'm more likely to buy your product. If you treat me poorly, but then say you're sorry, I can forgive you for that. Okay, I can still work with you. Right?
This is the basis of Cialdini's influence, 5 key points of influence, right?
Yeah, Robert Cialdini.
You can start influencing people through the norm of reciprocity.
Oh, sure. And this is when I work with organizations. This is how I talk about how leaders should be investing their time and energy in creating relationships with their people, because now we're talking about this concept called relational distance. And the closer I am to you, the more credible I am, the more trustworthy I am, right? And if my leader and I have close relational distance, we trust each other, we like each other, we want to hang out with each other. When my leader at the end of the year gives me a performance evaluation and he has to show me some things I do wrong and here's how to correct them, it might hurt me to hear those things, but I'll go, I trust you, I'm gonna try to correct those things. Now what happens though if my leader treats me poorly, I don't have a great relationship with them, and they say the exact same thing, my brain is more likely to say, you suck. I'm not gonna do those things. I'll act like I'm listening to you, but I won't do any of those things you tell me. The norm of reciprocity is huge, but also think about how it works between organizations and consumers. So Stephanie, I have to say one more thing. I am, when it comes to issues of diversity and inclusion, I am not a diversity and inclusion guy. Often you hear those two words in that order, diversity then inclusion. I am an inclusion and diversity guy. Not because I value one more or less than the other. It's because the research suggests this to us. If you don't have an environment, a culture of inclusion, get this, diversity can actually make it worse. If you don't have an environment of inclusion where people work well together and collaborate, diversity can actually make it worse. Imagine a homogeneous group of people, a group of people who are very similar along substantive lines, and they don't get along. Guess what happens? You bring new and different people into that group, outsiders in that group. Well, one of the things we know happen is this. Some of the people who previously did not get along, some of them start to get along, and guess what they do? They attack the new people coming in and cause them social pain. So I value both, but it's more a stepwise progression for me. You got to do certain things before you do other things. It's like baking. The other week I was making banana bread, and as I started getting into the project, my wife reminded me, hey, honey, pay attention to the recipe. You got to do things in a certain order or the banana bread won't turn out very well. And the banana bread turned out very well because my wife was overseeing the project all the way through, okay? I did steps 1 and 2, and then I did steps 3 and 4. Not 3 and 4, before 1 and 2. And for me, steps 3 and 4, diversity. Steps 1 and 2, inclusion. You lay down the foundation of inclusion, and now you can leverage diversity, the asset of diversity. Otherwise, diversity is just optics. If you don't have an environment of inclusion, if you're just bringing people in to fill categories, it's just optics, it's just visuals. Right. All right. Stephanie, can we go into breakout rooms and?
We can.
Or do you want to just proceed this way and just do Q&A throughout the whole thing? It doesn't matter to me.
Well, we're okay for breakout rooms. Or do you want to do a 30-minute come back together as a group and have them report back to you and then go back into the second round of?
Yes,
really,
I would like to do. Yeah, I would like to do that. I would like to do that if we can.